So this lesson we are going to talk about overloading constructors or constructor overloading. So what is basically constructor overloading? In a class, if there exists more than one constructors with different parameter list. So class contains more than one constructors with different arguments is what we talk about constructor overloading. As an example, if you are having a class called student, the student have got three properties: stud ID, student's name, stud age, three properties. And we have got three overloaded constructors. Based on the requirement, the respective constructor get executed. So student with no parameter, one constructor with the two parameters, integer and a string, and the other constructor with the three parameters, integer string as well as age. Integer string as well as integer. So we'll just see this in a practical way. So in our practical example, we are going to talk about employee class. So we'll create our main classes overloading constructors. So overloading constructors contains the main method. And also we have got another class in the same program. We have got another class as employee. So class employee contains three properties: integer, empno. So string, name, ename, and as well as float, salary are the three properties. So we are going to create three objects. So we are going to create three objects of employee. So employee emp1, the first employee reference is equal to new employee. This is what the first object is. The same way, the second object we are creating with the employee number and the employee name. Okay, now we will create three employee objects and the third employee emp3, three employee objects. So anyway, by default, the constructor will be available by the compiler, or if you want, you can create your own constructor, employee with no parameters, constructor with the zero parameters. And also one method, get details, is one method to display the details of the employee. So get details method to display empno, a separator we are giving, then the name of the employee, ename, separator, plus salary. So employee number, employee name as well as salary. So class employee contains three properties, one constructor without any parameter. So whenever you create an object, so we are creating three objects. So three times the constructor will be called. Then emp1 dot get details, calling the first object is calling get details. The second object is calling get details, and the third object calling get details. So we have got three objects and three objects. So each object is calling get details method. So we know what output is coming. By default, the state will be 0, employee number, employee name and salary. So 0, null and 0.0 is coming by default. All these three objects calls the constructor without any parameter. Employee with no parameter, this constructor. Now just imagine the second object is providing the integer value as well as a string value. So the second object is being created by passing an integer and a string. But we don't have a constructor with an integer and a string. That is why the error is coming here. So when you run this, what error is coming? A compilation error. Errors exist in this required project. Proceed. What is the error? The constructor employee with an integer is undefined. So clearly the compiler is telling that you are creating an object of employee with an integer and a string, but the respective constructor is not defined. So we should have a constructor for employee class, integer A and string B. So when you define this, the error is gone. This is the second constructor. Now the error has gone. Previously error was there, now the error is gone. So A value is assigned to empno is equal to A, and ename is equal to B. B value is assigned to ename. So when you create the second object, new employee 101 and Sunil, the control will come to this constructor. A value becomes 101, B value becomes Sunil, and that values are being assigned to EMPNO of EMP2. Then B value, that is Sunil, is assigned to ename. Now when you run this EMP2, let's run this program. Now there won't be any error. First object and the third object, employee number, employee name and salary is 0, null and 0.0. But the second object, employee number is 101, employee name is Sunil and salary 0.0. This is what the second object. Now we got two constructors with a different parameter list. The first one, employee with no parameter. Second one, employee with an integer and a string. Now for example, the third employee object, 102, the name of the employee, we are giving it as Naveen. And the third employee object, this one, and a salary also we are providing 2500 F, a floating point value. Now the error is coming. So there is no constructor with the three parameters, integer, string and a floating point value. So we should have one more constructor. I make a copy of this. We define one more constructor. Same constructor is not allowed, same signature. We'll say int C. Now salary is equal to C. So in this class, employee contains three properties as well as three constructors: employee with no parameter, employee with the two parameters, and employee with the three parameters. This is not integer, it should be float type. That should be float type, so that was the error before. Now there is no error. So A value is assigned to EMPNO, B value assigned to ename, and C value assigned to C. So EMP1's employee number, employee name, salary will be 0, null 0.0, because we are not giving any value of our own. So the default values will be given at the time of creating an object itself. When you create the second object, it will be initialized with the 0, null 0.0. Then after that, the constructor will be called. A value will be 101. B value is Sunil, that is assigned to EMPNO ename. The same way third object. So this is an example of overloading constructors. The first object, second object, we given the employee number as well as employee name, salary, default value, and the third object corresponding state is coming. Now let us see another case. What change I do is A and B are the variables declared in the constructor, whereas EMPNO and ename are the variables declared in the class. So these three variables are called as instance variable. They are called as instance variable. And the variables declared inside a method or in a constructor, that's called as local variables. So one is instance variable. The member data of a class is called as instance variable. And the variables declared inside a method, this particular parameter, or in the main method, EMP1, EMP2, EMP3, these are all declared inside the main method. So that local variables can be accessed only within that. And the instance variable, normal, member data, two type of variables now. Instance variable as well as local variable. Now just imagine, in the place of A, I'm giving EMPNO. In the place of B, we are giving it as ename. So now what is this EMPNO and ename? These two are local variables. This is local variables of this constructor. Whereas what is this two? Instance variable or three instance variables. So A to be replaced with the EMPNO, B to be replaced with the ename. Now what happens here is, when you create the second object 101 and Sunil, that values will be assigned to this EMPNO and ename. EMPNO becomes 101, ename becomes Sunil. But here, this is local variable, this one also local variable. So we are just assigning the value to the same local variable. We have not assigned it to the instance variable. In the previous case, when we have given A and B, second object value was 101 and Sunil 0.0. But now, when we create this object, the employee number, employee name and salary will be 0, null 0.0, and no changes are happening in the constructor. What is coming here? The assignment to variable EMPNO has no effect. Yellow colored, it's not giving it as an error, it's giving it as a warning. The assignment to variable EMPNO has no effect. Now when you run this, what is the second object employee number 0? But actually we given 101 and Sunil, but is it coming? No. Why? Because we have not assigned these values to the instance variable. It is only local variable. So what all variables are declared in a constructor or in a method, that is called as local variable, and the member data are called as instance variable. So this local variable value should be assigned to instance variable. So to tell that, we use a keyword called this, a reference variable of Java, a keyword of Java acting as the reference of the current object. Which object is that? That object is nothing but this. For example, my name is Sunil Joseph. So when somebody else is calling me, they call me with my name, Sunil Joseph. But when I talk about myself, I say I or me. The same way, this is a keyword or a reference variable acting as a reference of current object. Now, this EMPNO which I selected is a local variable, and this .empno becomes an instance variable. So local variable value is assigned to instance variable. Let us run this. Employee number is coming. Same way, this .ename is equal to ename. So run this, we will get the correct answer. The importance of this. 101 Sunil, salary is 0.0. It's always a good. Now, why we don't need to write this .empno here? Because there is no local variable with the name of EMPNO. A is a local variable, but EMPNO, there is no local variable with the name of EMPNO. So it will be treated as instance variable. So a local variable value is assigned to instance variable. But it is always a good practice to represent instance variable with this dot. It is always a good practice to represent local variable with this keyword. So it's sure that it will be an instance variable. So let's run this. We are getting the correct answer. Now, when you see another use of this keyword is to refer the instance variable and also to call the methods of the class. And another use of this one is in the second constructor, we say this .empno equal to empno. This .ename is equal to ename. The same logic only what is happening here also. So repetition of code is happening. Rather than repeating that code, what we can do is from this constructor, now you see the case of the third object. New employee 102, Naveen and salary. It will come to this constructor. Now we given only the value for salary. When you run this, only the third object salary will come, employee number and name will be null. But that logic is already defined in the previous constructor. So what I can do is, I can call the previous constructor or constructor by passing A and B. This is called as constructor chaining. So constructor 1 constructor is calling other constructor. This of A comma B. A is integer, B is string type. So we already got a constructor. So this should be the first statement. This of A comma B constructor chaining. So what is the flow of execution? When we create the third object, new employee with the 3 parameters, control will come to this constructor. There, what is that we are doing? It is calling this of A comma B. It will call this constructor. So this is what this keyword, and it's a must. In some situation, if the local variable name is matching with the instance variable name, to differentiate the local variable with instance variable, you should represent with this keyword. So what is the role of this? This is a keyword or reference variable of Java that refers to the current object. This can be used to refer the current class instance variable. This can be used to invoke current class method this dot display details. And this can be used to invoke current class constructor. This with parameter, that's what we call it as constructor chaining. Hope you are clear with this one. Happy learning.